So yes, thank you so much for having me here today. My name, as already been mentioned, I'm Enakimio. So yes, I am the founder of the HEALD method. I help organisations fix systems, not people, because bias, burnout, disengagement, it's not a behaviour problem, it's a design problem. That's my theory. Anyway, we're going to explore that more today. So today I want to start by asking a question, leading on from what I've just said there. And is that, do we have a diversity problem in the industry, or is it a system problem? Because we say construction has a diversity problem, but is it really a symptom of what is going on? The issue is that the system was built for sameness. It was built for a workforce that is no longer what it was, something that was in the 50s and the 60s. And for decades, I think we've rewarded endurance over empathy, visibility over value, conformity, I think, over creativity. And I'd say that it's not a system that's broken, but it is a system that is outdated. I wanted to just mention as well at the beginning that I'm a little bit like Faith, I don't know where she's gone. Just there. Started out on a very different path and chose to come into construction. So my background is in education. I started out as a secondary school teacher, then went into work for local government, advising education institutions on how they can improve their inclusion and their diversity. So looking very much at strategy and also looking at how we can engage communities in that. And already today we've spoken a lot about the numbers, so I'm not going to go into that because we've already discussed that, but the numbers themselves, they do not lie. And I just want to say that if a building was performing at 15%, what would we do about it? We'd tear it down, we'd start again, okay? So why are we tolerating that within our workforce? And we can't solve complex problems with one-dimensional thinking. And I think that's been a theme of today. And I want to talk a little bit about the commercial side of things as well, and the cost of exclusion. The UK industry, the construction industry at the moment is losing £15 billion every single year through disengagement, bias and rework. And when people don't feel seen, when they don't feel heard, when they don't feel valued, they're not going to speak up. We've spoken a lot today about how we need to encourage people to speak up. But if we're in a system that doesn't encourage that or support that, then it's very, very difficult. Brilliant minds lead. We've spoken about this already. We've spoken about that leaky pipeline. It's not just about young talent, it's about women as well. And projects overrun, innovation stalls, and fundamentally, inclusion is not just good ethics, it's good business. And sustainability, it's not just about the planet, it's about people. We can't build sustainable projects without sustainable cultures. And sustainability, as somebody has already said today, is about diversity of thought and teams that reflect the world that we live in. But again, I'm repeating what's already been said. So let's stop teaching people how to survive a broken system, and let's start fixing the system itself. So I want to introduce my panel today. So thank you very much. We've already heard from Emeka. We've got Dr. Blessing here, we've got Temi, and we've got Mark. Now, I'm not going to repeat what's already on the slide, but what I am going to do is I'm just going to read out a quote. I had the very fortunate pleasure, that didn't come out right. I had the pleasure of speaking to, it's been a long journey up from Lincoln. down from Lincoln. I had the pleasure of having a brilliant conversation with all these brilliant minds beforehand, and I just want to introduce them by sharing a quote from each of them. So I'm going to start with Temi. I know, not in order of my slides, sorry, but one thing she said to me when we spoke is, hard work doesn't pay off the same way for everyone. The system still rewards visibility over value, and that holds great people back. Emeka, he says, we talk about innovation, but you can't innovate without inclusion. The same people making the same decisions will always get the same results. Dr. Blessing, if your system isn't adaptable, it's not inclusive. True inclusion is when people don't have to change who they are to fit in. And last but not least, and you're sitting in the right place, Mark. Inclusion isn't a workshop, it's leadership. It's how you show up, it's how you listen, and it's how you build trust. So, enough of me, I'm going to get on with my questions. I'm going to start by asking you, Temi. So, you've spoken about how being told that hard work and keeping your head down is the way to progress. But it's actually terrible advice for women and underrepresented groups. So, why do you think that belief still holds so much power?
Thanks, Emeka. It's a great question. Hi everyone, my name is Temi Ojo. I'm currently working as Senior Treasury Advisor at BP. Although yes, I am an accountant by trade, but when you think about BP and sort of the bread and butter of what they do is construction, so I'm constantly engaging with lots of engineers and lots of very smart people. So in terms of that question, so I'll kind of like take it back a little bit. So when I grew up in Nigeria, I was born in Nigeria, I migrated to the UK when I was a teenager, and you know, you come to a new country, everything's new, and your parents kind of tell you, you know, you work hard, you do the right thing, and you know, you progress, and you know, people will notice you. And you know, I got myself into the corporate ladder and landed a graduate job at BP, and I worked hard. I worked really, really hard, but my peers, my colleagues were being promoted, and here I was still in the same position for many, many years. And I kind of had to go back to basics and ask myself really what was happening. Why was it that I felt I was being stagnant and not getting the recognition that I thought I was entitled to? And it was basically because, you know, I was doing that advice, practicing that advice I was given where my head was down, I was working really hard, but I wasn't being visible and I wasn't being noticed. And not only that, but I wasn't basically shouting out my achievements from the rooftops, and you know, unbeknown to me, my counterparts were. They were basically letting their bosses know what they were doing and what they were, you know, their achievements. And this is probably the turning point for me in my career, was that no matter what I did, I made sure that people knew and recognized that I was achieving these things, and I was putting myself forward for any opportunity that came as well. Sometimes I knew exactly what the opportunity was, and I had the capability to do it. And other times I probably didn't, but yet I still put myself forward because I knew that I had to show that I was willing to take on these new opportunities. And you know, the rest is history really. But yeah, I just say that for anyone in the workforce who's feeling as though that they're not being seen, yes, you have to make yourself visible and you have to put yourself out there, for sure.
Yeah, I do just want to kind of also point out, I mean, somebody also mentioned today, I can't remember who it was, about bringing people with you, because I think that's really important, isn't it, that we're creating as leaders that culture to do that. Because what you said there, I think it's, you know, it's a story for a lot of people, not just in the construction industry. I think it's exhausting, right? It's exhausting to constantly have to be visible, to constantly have to, you know, make yourself be seen and be heard. So I think, thank you, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I wish the world was in a place where, you know, my children will not have to go through what I've been through to get to the place I have, but unfortunately we're not there yet. But I'm hoping that spaces like this is bringing that awareness of such struggles that do exist in the system.
And let's talk about the invisible barriers. Yeah. Thank you. We're going to move on to Emeka. You said that innovation in construction is stalled because we keep asking the same people the same questions. Yeah? You used a brilliant analogy, and I'll let him share it if you like to. What would real inclusion look like in a project team, and what would it change?
Yeah, real inclusion. I would probably take it back to one of the projects that I've worked on, which was probably one of the best projects because it was so inclusive. We had a team of project managers, female, male. Had a Greek project manager who came to join me. She got pregnant, she left the project, came back, had a job there at the project. We had someone who eventually she married, who was neurodivergent, came up with great ideas as an M&E engineer on the project. We had someone who was suffering from mental health, because unfortunately they went through the loss of a child. But we all came together and supported him to still have a role in the project and what he was doing. And I think that melting pot of all of us together was something that was unique and something that really made a difference when we were going through the challenges that we had on that particular project. There wasn't any finger pointing. There was opportunities to say, okay, who's got another great idea? What else haven't we thought of? And what else can we bring to the table? As I mentioned, we all had different oars and we rode forward and we delivered that project successfully. So that's what it looks like when you have lots of different people. And for me, I've experienced that.
Without that, how many blind spots? Did you want to add something then?
No, it's fine, no.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you was going to build on that. But on that note, I am going to come on to you, Mark, because you mentioned you made some great points about how inclusion is not a workshop in its leadership. So what does accountability look like for leaders who say they value diversity but are still running on systems that don't?
Absolutely, it is a concern. Certainly looking through with my lens, you know, for me, accountability has always been action. It's calling out those behaviours. You know, it's a tough thing to do. You know, it's not easy for people to do that. A lot of people sometimes feel vulnerable, but for a leader, it is absolutely about being visible and being an advocate for change. And if you don't, you know, things just don't work out. I've seen it. You know, I've been in the industry for a long, long, long time. You know, for over 35 years, I'm still work in progress. You know, this stuff is hard, but we've got to commit if we truly want to manifest change into our industry. I think you can just look at the history books. I mean, you can go there and you can read how slow glacial change actually occurs, and it's really important that we learn from that. But I think, yeah, as I said, the good thing, I have been in the industry for, as I said, so over 35 years, and the amount of change that's happening over that length of time is staggering, and it is fantastic. It's a fantastic industry, but it is slow. Yeah. But as I said, accountability is about action and people calling out these behaviours where they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also creating environments where people feel safe to call out those behaviours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been in a lot of these courses where these kind of things are talked about, but what they don't get at is the detail of people, and you know, we have different levels of confidence, you know, and make them feel comfortable. For me, another key point is to really take your time with people, and I think we miss out on that. We work in very busy companies. We're delivering under pressure, and it's very hard to take a little bit of time out, take your time, and listen to people, and because it matters. Everybody matters.
Yeah, it's a massive issue I see across the organisations that I'm working in, is that time, creating that time.
You have to make the time.
You know, to be an effective leader, you have to create time.
Yeah.
And we're not very good at that in this industry. Anyway. Dr. Blessing, you made a powerful point about women not needing to be empowered because we are already empowered. And what we do need, though, is spaces where we can just be ourselves. So how do we shift the focus from fixing women to fixing the environments that limit them?
Good question. You mentioned earlier when you said something about 15%. If a building is functioning at 15%, what are we going to do? Tear it down. Now let's look at it this way. If you have a system in place that was built by men at the time, built for men at the time. Now we're in a different world. We are. And there are women in the sector. How are we designed to function? We're in construction space, so I can use my lovely analogy of grout and tiles. When you want to change your tiles in your bathroom, do you carefully remove the tiles and use the same grout to put the new tiles on? Or let's just sprinkle some water in it. Let's make it wet again and just put more tiles on. No. You're going to remove the grout to put a new grout on before you can put the tile on, isn't it? So your titles could be your branding, what you look like on the outside as an organisation, as a sector, but the grout is your culture. Now, we don't see it when we put our fancy marble tiles on the outside, but it's what's holding the tiles on. Now, if you want to have a new fancy looking bathroom, you're going to have to get the grout on there off to put the new one on. Same thing with our systems. We need to break it down to rebuild. There's no patching it up. We need to, on a micro level, on a macro level, we need to do it. Now, I usually work with organizations around the 5W framework to make it measurable, which I designed. The first thing is work. What is work? Is it what it was, or is it different now? We need to define what work is now. It needs to be clear. Clarity of purpose is very important. The second W is workload. Is it realistic? Can we examine the balance? What's the workload like in your industry, in your organization right now? Is it okay? Is it okay for men, for women, for everyone? What's your workflow like? Are there any bottlenecks that are preventing us from performing, from delivering on that which we want to do? The fourth one is the workplace. People are working from home, people are working on site. Is it accessible? Is there safety? Psychological safety is very important as well. Is it okay for me to think about going to work on Monday and have a panic attack? No, it's not. So we need to be careful about our safety in the workplace, wherever that workplace is. What is the culture in your workplace? Don't ignore it. It needs to be addressed. If it doesn't work, if it's not fit for purpose, scrap it and rebuild. Don't pretend like it doesn't exist. The workforce itself, how diverse, we've talked about that. What about AI agents? Are we ignoring that? It's coming in. How are our humans adapting with our AI agents? Is it plug and play, or do you need to rebuild? What about intergenerational work that's happening? You have 5 generations in one organization. Do the young people know how to relate with the older ones? Do you know what that looks like? What's your demographic like in your workforce? Are you attracting talent? We keep saying there's shortage. There's no shortage of human beings. How is there shortage of talent? I don't get it. It might have something to do with your system. It might have something to do with your branding, how you're presenting yourself. There's no shortage of people. So we need to get back to the basics here. Get back to the ground, not just the tiles. You have to get back to the system itself and make it fit for purpose.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
just going to add on that. It's absolutely true. The amount of biases that are manifest in organisations, and as you said, we need to change that. It's so abundant, and we have to change that kind of thinking. There's so much learned behaviour over years and years and years. It is changing. I don't want to be too negative, but it is changing. But it's worth recognising that.
Yeah, and I think something that really came through as well when you were talking, Dr. Blessing, is about how, ask questions. I think you mentioned before about, asking questions, but ask questions within your organisation too, and be collaborative. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and we were talking about how there's lots of training around unconscious bias, etc., and lots of training around, recruitment, but it puts the emphasis always on how we're going to fix people, how we're going to fix leaders. But actually, are we giving enough time to recruit? Are we interviewing too many people at a time? How are we selling our story? What does our recruitment process look like? Start asking those questions. And yes, I think you're right. I do think that there is a lot to do, but we take it bit by bit. Thank you. I want to come back to Temi, and I want to talk to you because obviously something I'm really, really passionate about, and I know this, you don't have enough time to go into this, but I also think that the education system is playing a huge part in, young people not always being aware of what is available to them. Okay, I was a secondary school teacher in the city of Manchester. I had teenage boys who were never going to pass their GCSEs, but I had no idea about this industry. I had no idea. I was definitely selling them short. But anyway, I'm not going to go off on this tangent too much. You mentor young professionals breaking into corporate spaces, yeah? What needs to change inside organisations so the talent doesn't have to overperform just to be seen?
So there are two things. I think organisations need to recognise that these glass ceilings do exist. They need to recognise that for certain demographics coming into the workforce, there are setbacks that already exist for them even before they put their foot through the door. And for me, I had to learn the hard way. I published my first book in February, where I actually mentioned all the various setbacks that I've had to endure and basically how I overcame them. So for me, it's important that not only do we have representation in these spaces, I can count so many different scenarios where I'm in a boardroom and not only am I the only woman, the only person of colour, so many things that, I will perhaps, share some ideas with colleagues of mine, and we get to the boardroom and they just claim them as theirs. It happens so often, too often. So these are things that, like many of us have had to endure, but unless we, and I think I said this to you, Emeka, I don't believe that as people who have gone through this, that we should always share our traumas as a learning experience for others.
There's a great LinkedIn post about that after our conversation.
Because sometimes, although we need to make people aware of some of these struggles, but it is traumatic to share some of these experiences that I've been through for others, to educate others. But I feel as though corporates also need to take some responsibility about how they are, engaging their senior leaders about some of these struggles of new entrants into the business and how they can empower them. There's so many leadership courses that are available that they could perhaps take some of these new entrants through, just recognizing the barriers that exist and just not pretending that they don't exist, because my fellow panelists have said, they're inherent, they're within the systems. Until you break them down and you kind of rebuild them up again, they will still be there, and it will just be a cycle that keeps repeating itself. So I think just recognizing that they exist and how we can combat them basically.
Can I just add something to that? Yeah, it's just really important because being a white middle-aged man, and I see
You
this.
say that, yeah.
Sorry, I'm not saying it because I think it's really fascinating when you go to these conferences, or not these conferences, but when you go to a corporate conference and they talk about, diversity, and then you look at the board and they're all white, and I just sit there and I go, can you not hear yourselves? It's a bugbear for me because I see it, I hear it, and I think, well, you're saying it, but you're not really changing it, are you? So I just want to add that point because it niggles me a bit.
Please.
Sorry.
Yeah, if I kind of just build a little bit on perhaps what the ways people should be responding to that. I don't know if most people have heard about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. People heard that before? And I used that at one of my previous organisations where the CEO was middle-aged white man, if you say that. But even if he wasn't, he drove his Aston Martin down from Scotland to the London office probably twice a month. And when he looked at people in his organisation, there were people who struggled to get the tube into the office, and they lived in London. So there was such a gap between where he was and his way of thinking to those in his organisation. And a further example was during Black History Month, where one of our young engineers wrote to the senior leadership team complaining about how the company's response had been effectively subpar compared to other organisations. So he held a meeting, and I was asked to join the meeting and to speak. And I took some advice as to how to approach this, not be sort of pitchforks at the door, why aren't you doing this, you should be doing more. And I asked him simple questions: what do you think about racism in our organisation? And he said, within his 35 years of being in the organisation, he'd never seen any racism and never experienced anything in the company. And just then, the director of HR then chimed and said, we actually dismissed 2 people at the beginning of this year for racist incidents in the company. And it wasn't for me that the CEO didn't know, was like he didn't take the time to find out. Now, if he called his team, my top 10 team, and said, right, we've got these guys coming in 5 minutes, let's just have a quick discussion. What do I need to know? And he came on the call and he said to us, and he opened with, we dismissed 2 people this year, our response would have been different. And even though you only found out 5 minutes ago, it's taking that time to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable with hearing the uncomfortable, and then doing something about it.
Brilliant, thank you. I have to stop myself because we don't have much time, but I have a million things to say and a million more questions to ask and a million things that we could go on to. But I'm going to just ask each of you before I do wrap up. If you could change one thing, I'll start with you, Mark. If you could change one thing in the construction industry tomorrow, to make it more inclusive, what would that be?
I just think it's image. I would like to see there's some incredible people in the UK and around the world. I'd just like to see an image change, like maybe some national campaigns that we would see, and just sort of bring to the wider public what this industry is about. Yeah, we just don't see it.
Yeah.
We see it in other industries, we just don't see it in the construction industry.
Thank you. Temi?
So this can be applied to all industries really. I feel like it's important that senior leaders and people in places of seniority just recognize that, similar to what I said before, that you know, there's so many struggles that you face, that we all face generally in life, but then as a person of colour, the person who has, you know, certain, you know, things standing against them, there are extra and added additional things that we face coming into the corporate world. So it's just, you know, not, you know, closing our eyes to these, but just recognising that what can we do to support our employees, support our, you know, people, to make sure that they have a good footholding when they come in the door. Yeah.
I think mine would be to leaders. Leaders being ourselves as individuals, or leaders of organizations or institutes, or in any capacity you find yourself. Challenge the status quo. I think it's time we shake things up. That statement that grinds me, which is, that's the way it's always done. It's what causes us to conform. So when you come in with your brilliance, and you come into an organization and they say to you, but that's the way it's always done. You have to dull your shine to fit into this, you know. If we can challenge the status quo and red flag that statement at all levels.
It's a very expensive statement.
Yeah. If we can red flag and be, like you said, be comfortable being uncomfortable with that, saying that's not allowed in this institute, that's not allowed in this sector, that's not allowed in this organization, it's not something we allow on our board. No one should open their mouth anymore to say that's the way it's always been. And I think if we can red flag that, challenge that, change would start. And we would see the difference of it.
Yeah, the one thing, it's probably controversial, but maybe I'll make it 2 things, if that's allowed. I think the one thing which I think I've said before is, if we had a metric that was tied to diversity and inclusion within an organisation, and that metric was tied to the bonuses of the leaders in that organisation, do you think they would sit up and pay attention? Yeah, they would. And that's more of a stick than a carrot. So I think that metric probably would be for organisations to understand how it benefits them in terms of the value that they bring to their organisations, the value they're bringing to from a social mobility perspective, to the environments that they're working in, to the people that they're building and delivering for. If we can get that metric to be understood from the organisation right from the top to the bottom, I think that will make a huge difference in our industry.
Thank you. I think, just to sum up, construction's always been about building buildings at last, yeah? But we're using systems that were built decades ago and they're holding us back. And I think we've heard from some leaders today who show us what real change looks like. So Temi, she shows us how visibility is value. Emeka, that sameness kills innovation. Dr. Blessing that inclusion must be designed, not delegated, and Mark that leadership starts in conversation, not compliance. So diversity and inclusion, they're not side projects, they're foundations. So let's stop patching cracks in a crumbling system and rebuild properly this time.